Welcome to Just an Hour, which is an informal conversation that we have at the Fulton Teachers College. So thank you for joining us for this. This is an opportunity to sort of, very informally engage with ideas. It's open to all faculty, doctoral students, and others who might want to join in these conversations. Are there any people who are joining us for the first time? If you are, drop a note in the chat, just sort of telling us about who you are and what brought you here. My name is Punya Mishra. I'm the Associate Dean for Scholarship and Innovation at the Fulton Teachers College. Just an Hour is a collaboration between the three vice deans, Betty G, Gustavo Fishman, and myself, though you'll notice that they have all left me here alone today. Gustavo is traveling. Betty is busy with some important meetings, getting a free lunch. She has promised to steal some cookies for me. So we'll see whether she keeps that part of the bargain. Just some quick announcements before we start. As you know, we had actually mentioned this before, but this is important. Mikichi won the 2023 Yidan Award for Educational Research. There will be a ceremony in Hong Kong, and there is going to be a symposium coming up in the spring semester date and all that to be announced. Also, a shout out to the Education Hub. If you haven't used the Education Hub, it is a really gone to it. It's it's myeducation.asu.edu. Lots of resources that are of use to faculty, staff, and students can be found there. And finally, don't forget to keep us informed about your latest work through the Scholarship Roundup survey. At some point, I will drop a link to that in the chat as well. Let me just see if anybody is in the waiting room. Nope, we are good. All right, so today's conversation is about, we have these Learning Futures collaboratives at the college. We did one session a couple of weeks ago with two of them. Today, we're going to talk with members of two other Learning Futures collaboratives. If you don't know about what these LFCs are, these are intended to meet the goals of future-focused, ideas-driven, high-impact research agendas among MLFTC faculty and graduate students. If you go to learningfutures.education.asu.edu, if somebody can drop that link, that'll be great. You can see all the different Learning Futures collaboratives that we have. We are now in our second year of these collaboratives, and we're going to focus on two of these collaboratives today. The first is the Futures of Artificial Intelligence in Education. And the second one is mapping the emerging AI landscape and implications for K-12 students. So slightly different focus, but connected together with an interest broadly in artificial intelligence and what role it plays in education, whether in higher ed or in the K-12 space. I'm curious about how many people here have used generative AI in some shape or form. I am sort of obsessed with it. So I spend way more of my time than I should playing and messing around with it and trying different things. So if you have used generative AI in any shape or form, so let's say ChatGPT or Claude or DALL-E, Midjourney, whatever, there's so many of them around. If you don't mind, drop what you've been doing with them in the chat, and that I think will be a great way to find out what are the different kinds of uses people are putting into this. So with that, I'm going to actually pass the baton on to Bree. Are you there? Lydia is there. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to pass the baton on to Lydia from SERPI for joining us today. And maybe, Lydia, you can kick us off with telling us a little bit about the work that you guys have been doing around sort of mapping the AI landscape and looking at sort of implications for K-12 students. I know Jim Dunnigan is there in 101P Pain. So he has been doing some work with you as well. So maybe start off with you, and then I'll pass it on to Janelle to talk about the other LFC.
That's great. Thank you so much. Just to answer your first question, we have been using generative AI qualitative software, analysis software, and piloting that to assist in some of our data analysis that we've been doing. It's a new piece of software. So that's for your first question, Punya. For your second question, I'm a researcher at the Center on Reinventing Public Education, which is part of Mary Lou Fulton. And we've been working to as Punya mentioned, to begin to map the landscape for school districts and then for state education agencies around their official policies and official policies pertaining to AI, generative AI, but then also to begin to understand where they're turning for information about those policies, what they're worried about, what their hopes are. And I can tell you, we've done what I would kind of call a sort of rapid response landscape scan over the summer and early fall. This was really looking at state and district level leaders. And Jim maybe can talk a little bit more about that. But then also we have a survey that's in the field right now, 3 survey items. It's part of our American School District Panel project that we collaborate on with RAND. And this is a representative sample of US school systems. And in that survey right now, we're asking them if they have an official district policy, if not, why? And then they'll be given the option to self-select into an interview in which myself or I or my colleague Robin Lake will be interviewing them about their hopes, their fears, their sort of realities that they're facing on the ground, if they have any test initiatives going on. And then we also have another project where 3 school systems, we're collaborating with 3 school systems to look at how they're scaling up changes, innovations within their school systems that leverage generative AI. One of these school systems, I'll just give a quick example so you can know a little bit about it, is a school system charter management organization in Los Angeles area called Da Vinci Schools. And they're using generative AI to really create a project-based learning platform, and the AI interacts with the student to help build a project-based learning agenda for them, or almost a syllabus. And then also there's more elements to it, but that's the main AI component to it. And so we're collaborating with them and studying them, like what happens as they're trying to take this from, their pilot of 6 classrooms out to the whole system. And what are the challenges that they run into? What are the sort of sources of skepticism? What are the limits of the technology? And then how they're circumnavigating those various barriers. And I'll pause there if there's any questions. And
thanks, Lydia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it to Janelle to
Perfect.
talk about the other LFC. And then I think Jim, who is sort of at the intersection of the work that you guys are doing and what we are doing, can chip in at some point, and we'll go from there. So Janelle, I'm going to have you take over from here. Tell us a little bit about what this other LFC is about.
So a little about our futures of AI in education. My name is Janelle White-Taylor. This is probably Friday mornings at 10 is like one of the highlights of my week, and really kind of a highlight of the day as well. I mean, it's a really cool group to be a part of in the sense that we discuss AI from people within Mary Lou Fulton, also outside of Mary Lou Fulton, which is really cool. This is kind of a brief description of our LFC and what we're up to. And the whole group is comprised of people within Mary Lou Fulton, outside of Mary Lou Fulton. We have folks that are like Jen, that are a part of the OODLE team, folks that are in different parts of the college, different parts of the university, all doing different things. So I just want to share a little bit about what we're up to. These are our members, and we keep growing. So this is kind of a brief look of who we are. So you want to kind of see who we are and what we're up to. But now keep moving past this. Our achievements for 2022, 2023 has been, we did a lot, and then looking towards this year, a lot of different things are happening. So just kind of a brief overview of what we've been up to: journal articles, presentations, workshops, focus groups. We're working on some power-ups, as well as some generative AI teaching and learning drop-in sessions, as well as some quality of research pieces that have also been done. Again, as we keep looking at this, we looked at kind of the intersection of all the different things that our LFC has done, and looking at research and our group across is kind of interesting because I think everyone within our group is doing something within their space and kind of outside of their space, really to use AI as well as to promote and to help other people that are a little reluctant in using it, help them to see how you can use it and do some interesting, I'm going to say some cool things with it. But as we're looking at this, there's research pieces, there's faculty support, there's curriculum development, there's outreach. We want to give time to make sure that we have a chance for some other people, members of our LFC, to talk more about what they've been up to. But you can see from this slide, as well as the previous slide, just some of the things that we've been a part of. Not only have we been doing things on the research side, but infusing things into classes, refining materials, discussing tools, trying to figure out some of the best ways that it can be used and some of the ways that maybe we shouldn't use it. But I think more of it is looking at what are the upsides, as well as new tools that come out, really trying to figure out, where do those tools fit in and how do they work. So I guess I'll pause there, and that way we can popcorn around to the other people in the LFC and talk more about what we've been doing and how we've been doing it.
Thank you, Janelle. Janelle, maybe start with Jim, because that's sort of the intersection of the work that SERPI has been involved in, as well as what we have been doing in the LFC. The only thing I want to add to what Janelle said before we go there is that I'm really proud of the fact that we came up with the AI LFC before ChatGPT came along. So we were sort of ahead of the curve, so to speak. So I feel really good about that. And initially we had like 3 or 4 members, and come November of 2022, suddenly we were the most popular LFC in town. And I think that also honestly gave us a little bit of a foothold into the conversations happening at the university. Almost all the members of our LFC are involved in some shape and form, or formed in committees and groups across the work that's happening at the university. And so when people looked around as to, who's working in this space, we were ones who were right there. So I think that's been a great benefit. And I think hopefully some of the members of the LSC will speak to that. But Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you. You've done some work with sort of focus groups with superintendents and leaders, in collaboration, with SERPI. And then there's a couple of publications and things that are coming out of that. So on to you.
Sure. Thank you. Just picking up where Lydia left off, talking about SERPI, and I kind of sit within the kind of in between those. I do live in Seattle. I'm down in Arizona today, but SERPI is based in Seattle, which was fortuitous for me. So I teach in the college, in the EDD program in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, but I'm also doing half-time AI work with SERPI and with the college. But picking up where Lydia was talking about, it turns out that when SERPI was doing a lot of work with what they call rapid response when the pandemic hit, and they did a tremendous amount of work to kind of gear up and take the pulse of where schools and school districts were in K-12 in terms of responding to the pandemic. And it turns out that AI, how it's emerging so quickly onto the landscape, kind of fits the pandemic model. I think we all kind of feel that way. We get headaches from it as well. But the rapid response model or framework that SERPI had really worked well. And one of the first things we did back in August was to go out and talk to superintendents. They happen to be in the Michigan area, and then a whole bunch of heads of schools in the Pacific Northwest in about 5 or 6 different states. And what we did is to try to take the pulse of these superintendents and school leaders to see where they were with generative AI in general, but ChatGPT essentially specifically. And what we found, and this is data that's coming from August, but I think it's still holding fairly true right now, is that these school leaders were essentially overwhelmed by what was happening with generative AI. It came on the landscape in November of 2022, but by the summer, they really hadn't done much with it. They had no plans for teacher development in any robust way. they didn't really have plans. They felt that their acceptance use policies that they had in place really would cover generative AI in the sense of plagiarism, right? So they felt fairly comfortable with that. In fact, the school leaders were kind of exasperated by the fact that there's no manual, there's no guidance for what ChatGPT does. And some of the school leaders said, look, we don't know what this tool is. We really don't know enough to set policy. And one person said even, school board is asking me for policy, but I'm reluctant to set it because I don't know what this is. And so there wasn't really a sense of urgency. There was definitely a sense of equity, concern about equity in terms of making sure that all students get access to this, but the school leaders were just trying to figure this out. In fact, one of the quotes that we got from the focus groups, we asked the school leaders, if we could give you a magic wand to do anything with generative AI and chat, what would you do? And the response that came back almost immediately was, I would just like to be able to slow it all down, right? And so that became, as soon as Punya heard that, that became the lead title for a journal article we did. And I think the journal article is coming out in the Tech Trends. I think we looked at the proofs last night. It may be coming out any day now. So we wrote our findings up in the Tech Trends. And then we're also going to have a blog post that should be coming out in the next day or so in the 74 as well that talks about this. But essentially what we did with the focus groups is to try to take the pulse. And what Lydia was referring to is that what CERPI is going to be doing going forward, there was also work done nationally to find out what school districts are doing, is that we'll try to keep tabs on what schools and school districts are thinking, which is different from what higher education is doing. And they're still trying to, I think, absorb all of this and try to figure out where does this fit in. But I'll leave this with one comment. I was talking with some teachers and school leaders last night in a workshop. I think what we've shifted from is initially when it came out was, let's ban this thing. This is terrible. This is a plagiarism machine. And that's where we were, let's say, from November to, I don't know, March or April. And now I think we're seeing more and more an acceptance that this is going to be integrated into everything we do. I think that reality has set in. And now I think we're seeing a shift where school districts are saying, okay, this is going to be a reality. How do we make this work for teachers and for students? And then what policies might we need if we find gaps? So I think there's a shift happening to, yes, this is happening. How do we try to make this work with students? But I don't think they're still really there yet in terms of what they really think they need to do from a pedagogical standpoint or a training standpoint. So that's kind of that in a nutshell.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Janelle, before we jump in, I know you have a sequence of things that you'd like to go through. I'm just looking at the comment that Carolina just put on there. So maybe, I know you have been on this ChatGPT for Teachers Facebook group. Carolina, maybe you can tell us a little bit about I'm on that group, I lurk in that group, and it is one of the most amazing spaces on the internet right now in terms of just the level of discussions, people not just talking about here is an idea that I had, they're talking about the ethical issues, they're talking about what is it, not just plagiarism, but what does it mean for teachers to use it, but not let students use it. I mean, the range of discussions there are just actually quite impressive. And makes you actually kind of proud of being an educator when you look at the depth of discussions going on there. So Carolina, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of a snapshot about what you're seeing in that group.
Yeah, definitely I would say the word is like a sense of just being overwhelmed about the amount of information that's going on. I think a lot of the teachers are sort of like coming to these groups. I'm part of a lot of them at this point, just because we were doing some work with CERPI to try and figure it out a little bit about what teachers are thinking and talking and discussing regarding AI. And there's this sort of like duality or sort of like clash between the idea of wanting to implement AI and like sort of like a jump on board with this change, but also kind of like a pushback in terms of feelings of almost that they're like not good enough and that they have to kind of like use these tools to sort of like come up with ideas for teaching. So there's a lot of conversation around well, like, I don't know if I should use it in my classroom, like my school district's not doing anything. Should I really like go and talk about it that openly? There's a lot of discussions around this idea. So it's honestly very interesting, and we're still trying to figure it out, how to put all that information together, because as you could see in the group, there's like 50, 60 posts a day, in between questions and resource sharing and all of that. So yeah, I'll put the link in the chat for you guys to take a look at that. But yeah, definitely a lot of overwhelming feelings for sure.
Thank you, Carolina. All right, Janelle, back to you. I know you have a slew of characters you want to parade across the screen, so.
Yes, so since we were talking about teachers and teachers using it, I want to throw it to Steve to talk about what he's doing in his course and how it's going there.
So I'm Steve Salick. I teach in the Learning Design and Technologies MED program. One of the things we noticed as soon as generative AI came to widespread public awareness in the late part of last year was that people in the learning design and the instructional design space were writing about it almost immediately as a design tool or as a design partner. And we've started integrating it into our program across all of our classes across the board for students to use as an assignment. And the language we've settled on based on what we know about generative AI and its role is we're calling it a design partner for learning design. So when students are responsible now for using it, in each course there's going to be at least one assignment using generative AI. In the current course right now we have a emergent technology course going on, and in the past when we get to the module on artificial intelligence, that's really break students out for whatever reason. So this semester we're going to try putting a creative change on it, and what they'll have to do is they will have to they'll have this role-playing thing where they're given 5 hours to complete a work assignment, and what they'll have to do is they'll have to use generative AI to generate a script, to generate voiceovers, to generate all the images, and then they'll have to stitch that together. And the quality of the movie they make is not the issue we're trying to really reinforce. What we're trying to reinforce is how you prompt these tools to get the desired results and create effective learning products.
Thank you. And briefly, I'll talk about my EDT 180 course. EDT 180 is the intro-level tech course that all of our Mary Lou Fulton teacher college students take. It's also a gen ed requirement. So we have about in the online course, probably close to 1,200 students a year that participate in that course. So what we have done is we just went through IRB, had a survey approved, so that way we can survey our students about their knowledge about AI and Gen AI. At the same time, they have 3 different assignments that are focused on AI that kind of introduce them to what is a chatbot with like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude. They also have an overview assignment where they're learning about some of the different presentation tools, and they have to go in and play with them and figure out how to use them. They also have to create a picture that's past, present, future that includes themselves that they'll use in a later assignment, also developing music. And then at the end of the semester, they kind of pull it together with a podcast and a podcast script that they have to go through a Gen AI tool and help design that script, as well as creating pictures and music that goes with their podcast. So really trying to figure out how they can kind of leverage the tools, use the tools, but then also learn about them at the same time. So with that, I'm going to pop over to my next person, which is Jen. And Jen Warner is going to talk a little bit about some of the resources that we have within the university. And this is one of the cool things about our LFC is not only are people a part of our college, but the reach and the different committees and the different communities of practice that we're all a part of is really cool. So Jen, tell us about some of the things that you have going in your world.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Warner. I'm a senior instructional designer with the Office of Digital Learning. At our, the focus of OODLE is to make sure that we have information and can help the faculty. So one of the things we've done there is we have put together a generative AI resource page on the hub. I'll put that into the chat here for you. And all this, or what this is just a collection of resources that are talk about generative AI. It's a collection from all over the university, as well as some other notable, articles and things like that have come across our desks. So along with that, we have also created, in collaboration with the LFC, we've also created a couple of different pieces for a toolkit to help faculty work through generative AI questions in their courses. So the first thing that I will send, or that I will put in the chat, is a little bit of an experiment. So when generative AI first came out, and as it was said, it was a thing people were very nervous about, and from a course design standpoint, it was something that people were worried that, you know, they would have to rip apart their entire course to be able to meet the demands and combat the plagiarism that happened with generative AI. So what we did is we created this little experiment to kind of help faculty walk through their assignment, or walk their assignments through generative AI and see what type of answers they might be seeing. This will help inform you. This will help also inform you to see, or to review student responses, but also help you inform you to help restructure any assignments, or maybe if you want to bump up different levels or have your students interact with like prompts that happen through generative AI, things like that. So as you can see, all the basics of the experiment is just running your assignment or your discussion prompt through ChatGPT or Perplexity. Any of those type, the Dolly being not Dolly, Dolly's the image one, but Bing, Claude, any of those things. So you run them through there, and then you see what it gets, and then basically you just grade it as it were an assignment that was turned into you by a student, and see what kind of insight it shows. The other thing that we have created, and I'll actually put the full toolkit in the chat for you, because the other thing we've created is just a list of or like a list of questions. So this is based on Andrew Maynard's article, and this is a list of 15 questions that every college professor should know or should ask about their ChatGPT and other generative AI pieces. This will help if you are thinking about putting generative AI into your course, or thinking about how your course should work in the age of generative AI. These questions will help you kind of walk through those pieces. So that's what we're working on in our office. We also have, like everyone said, we're doing a lot of connections in different units of the college. We have, we're doing some work with the provost. We are doing some work with learning experience group, and in a number of different places to kind of get an MLFTC presence in these conversations.
Thank you so much, Jen. And Punya, I'm going to have you talk a little bit more about your Visions project.
Putting too big a label on it to call it a project. Those of you who have had a chance to interact with me at all over the past 6 months know that how obsessed I've become with these tools as ways of thinking, as tools to make me capable of doing things that I never thought were possible, like write code in Python and create working computer programs, so on and so forth. But the one that I want to talk about, which is the most recent one, which is if you have the paid version of GPT, it actually allows you to upload images and then have a conversation about the images. So if you click on the link here, this is a link to my website about all my posts related to AI. But if you go to the second one, which is called AI When AI Can See, some of the things that I could have AI do or that AI could do just literally blew me away. So I could take an article by the Pew Research Center on refugees and immigration, and they had 3 graphs in that article. I just uploaded just the 3 graphs, and I asked ChatGPT to interpret these graphs and then give me a write-up about what the meaning of these graphs are. And so just think about what that even means. That it could take the graph, it could read the text on the graph, so it is doing OCR, and then it is connecting those conceptual ideas and coming up with a narrative. I could put an image of these, the classic image of a textbook about how seasons happen and say, hey, here is an image. Can you tell me what kind of misconceptions possibly students could have because of this image? And it gave me 6 different ways in which these images, because it shows things to be that these Earth goes around the sun in an oval, but actually it is much closer to a circle than an oval. And people tend to think that seasons are caused because the Earth is closer to the sun rather than the tilt of the sun, so on and so forth. So these are the kinds of things that just literally blew my mind that we could do something like this, right? And the other example that I'll give is the first link called the total eclipse of the sun. If you're on that page, I had taken a picture when I was a grad student in Urbana-Champaign of a total solar eclipse, but I didn't take a picture of the sun. I took a picture of the ground below a tree. And basically what happens when you have an eclipse, because the sun is coming through the leaves, between the leaves, they act like tiny pinhole cameras, and you get these crescents all over the ground. And I asked it, like, what is this an image of? So it gave me some answer, and I said, you're missing something. Look at the shape. And then it said, oh, yes, this is a solar eclipse. Then I said, can you tell me when the solar eclipse happened? I was a grad student in Urbana-Champaign in the 90s. And it said, oh, this happened on May 10th, 1994. And I asked it for the time, and it said, between 11 and 1 p.m. is when most probably this photograph was taken based on the nature of the image, blah, blah, blah. So I just want us to sort of think about that. I mean, so my role, I think, in this LFC has been of the guy who's always going and trying different weird things and saying, what implications does it have? I've had conversations with an artificial student where they have a misconception about evolution. So they think evolution is teleological in nature, or a Lamarckian view of evolution. And then I'm playing the teacher and trying to figure out how to explain to this person that their framework is incorrect. And it's harder than you think. And I've been thinking of ways that this could be used in our teacher prep programs and other ways that we could start thinking of AI in a different kind of way rather than thinking of it as a plagiarism machine, right? And so if you think about, one last comment before I pass the baton back. You hear a lot about that AI hallucinates. And the way I have started thinking about it, that actually is the strength of AI. It is not a truth machine. It is not a search engine. It is actually a tool that helps us think. And for a partner who is a good thinker with you, you actually want somebody who can think in divergent ways, who can do genre mashups, who can think creatively, and then give you that output for you to start working with. If you see it that way, I think it becomes an extremely powerful tool that we can use for educational purposes. And I could go on and on, as people who know me will testify to. So I will keep quiet. Janelle, pass it back to you.
I think this is why our meetings are so lively, is because you have a group of people that enjoy playing around with the different tools and learning how to use the different tools and trying to figure out what are the implications for the tools, where are the upsides, where are the downsides. I mean, I think as we're playing and working with them, I think we're also seeing, some of the bias pieces. I think there's some fascinating things being done by people from all over, really thinking about what are some of those bias pieces, and what does this mean for the future? What are the implications for that? So now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole, because she's going to share with us a very interesting piece about an AI writing project, which I think we all were very excited about earlier today. So Nicole.
Thank you, Janelle. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Oster, a first-year PhD student in the LLT program. So Punya and I have been writing a piece for the Irish Journal of Technology Enhanced Learning, which put out a call with the goal of encouraging transparency in AI use. So this journal invited us to write a submission with 3 different sections, including an introduction, a book review written completely by AI, and a reflection on this process. So Punya and I engaged in an iterative back and forth dialogue with Claude AI, which is an LLM that's very similar to ChatGPT. to write a review on 2 books about AI. And those books were God, Human, Animal, Machine by Megan O'Giblin and The Alignment Problem by Brian Christian. However, we couldn't fit all of these conversations into our paper, so we ended up combining multiple prompts from past dialogue into a single prompt and then sharing the single output of the book review in the center of the article. So then for our reflection on this process, we highlighted that Claude AI was pretty successful in capturing many of the core ideas and themes of both books, as well as the authors' backgrounds. It even brought in, with prompting, theoretical frameworks relating to education, talking about its relevancy to educators, which was another strength. At the same time, we were critical of some of its limitations. For example, Claude AI struggled to make judgments and evaluative statements, which you really do need in a book review. So this was a downside. Additionally, it ended up using a pretty objective tone, even though we did try to encourage it to be speculative and creative in its review. It still landed in a pretty neutral tone. Another kind of interesting moment was when Claude AI occasionally used first-person pronouns in its review, using the pronoun I, for example, which felt both interesting and kind of a bit jarring to read. So kind of given all of this in this experience, we believe it's important to be both collaborative as well as critical when using generative AI. And you can see some of Claude AI's writing also in our abstract, and I'll share some of that now. So Claude AI wrote for the abstract, "In this article, I, Claude AI, describe my collaboration with 2 human authors around writing an academic book review. The humans engaged me in an iterative dialogue to co-create a review. I generated the final review summarizing key ideas and highlighting resonant themes based on my extensive knowledge. The authors critically analyzed the review I wrote, identifying my strengths in synthesizing, but limitations in evaluation due to my lack of human experience. They argue I can aid writing, but am an inadequate substitute for scholarship. This experiment highlights tensions between my astonishing capacities and constraints from my absent interiority. It demonstrates potentials and pitfalls of human AI collaboration in writing. Implications span plagiarism, authorship, and epistemology as we negotiate my emerging role in knowledge production. I, Claude AI, wrote this abstract." So that was from Claude AI. So thank you for allowing us to share.
Thank you, Nicole. I mean, that abstract, I mean, we literally laughed out loud.
Yeah.
It was such a blast. So yeah, we are going to submit it as is. We'll see what happens. Again, pushing the boundaries of academic publishing. One AI generated.
As is, that's cool. Yeah.
Okay, Janelle, anything else before I would move on to a few other questions or things like that way?
Sure, go ahead. That was our last.
All right, perfect.
Passing the baton.
I noticed that Bree has joined us from SERPI, so welcome. I know you just got home from the airport, so won't put you on the spot too much, but if there's something you want to, Lydia and Carolina and Jim had already talked a little bit about the work that you guys are doing, but if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to jump in.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for announcing my entrance and for managing my airport attire. But it sounds like if you've heard from Jim and Lydia, we coordinated before. So I think they've shared everything that I would have to say. I would just say that I'm coming back from 2 conferences where AI, one on competency-based learning and one on advocacy and policymaking, and AI was absolutely a theme in both. And I think one of the interesting questions that got asked at this most recent conference I just left this morning was actually ways that educational advocates and policymakers and like teacher and parent-led activist groups could be thinking about using AI. And it was just a new push for my brain, at least. I think we're thinking a lot about, students, K-12 or higher ed, or even ourselves. But it was really interesting to start to think about this lens through the next level of supports within a system. So I would just share that the conversation is really rich, and we definitely geeked out. Last night we made some wallpaper using DALL-E, and then put it into a wallpaper site where we actually made customized wallpaper based on different types of dogs that people owned. Or I'm sorry, not wallpaper, wrapping paper for Christmas or whatever winter holiday you might, birthday presents, etc. So we had a good time. But yeah, great to be here with you all and to see all the things that you're doing. And I'm actually sharing these links that you're putting with our team too in our broader chat. So thanks. Yes, we did have a Goldens and pugs.
Thank you. One of the members of our LFC, Kelly Kreiser, who is actually in Thunderbird, couldn't join us today because I think she's traveling right now or something. She has been doing some incredibly amazing things in the art space, where she's using Midjourney to create these artists and then actually using them to print them onto pillow covers, into all kinds of different physical artifacts. So you're seeing the sort of the creativity piece coming into actually the physical world in terms of objects that she actually brings into class and then shows us. So there is that aspect of sort of the visual creativity piece as well, and questions about is it truly creative or not, of course. I would love to hear from any other people who are maybe not part of the LFC. I know Carl had put in a comment a little while ago, who have used or have tried to use these tools and what your experiences have been.
So we used it last summer to experiment with our classes, and it was interesting, got good results, nothing like you guys are doing. And so as we get more deeply into it, we'll be tapping on you. But I did want to mention one thing to you that I might be getting in touch with your LSC about, is we're doing a research practice kind of research translation project for ASA, the Arizona School Administrators, for superintendents, to create syntheses on research around topics that are important to the ASA folks, to the superintendents, for their school boards, for when they lobby the legislature. I expect I'll be working with them at the conference next week to define some of their priorities around this, and I expect AI will be one of them. And so we'll probably be coming to your doors to ask for current research around this that could help inform superintendents about AI, about current usage of it, about policies around it that they may want to take to their school boards, et cetera. So I just wanted to let you know that's on the boards.
Thank you, Carl. So one of the things that Kathy Hoffman had actually organized a meeting of superintendents, sort of a roundtable. This is, I think I'm guessing around a month ago. So Ron Beghetto and I had gone and actually presented there. So we do have some slides and resources that, just as at starting points for thinking, because many of them, what we found out, had never used it. And so we actually have a whole series of prompts that we gave them that they could try. And that's when sort of the light bulbs go off. It's like, oh, this thing is different than what I'd sort of imagined it was, because the mapping to Google is very strong, right? That this is a search engine. And once you start playing with some of these prompts, you realize that there is something fundamentally different about this technology than we have ever had in the entire sort of history of human civilization. You know what I mean? It's kind of very, very strange. So yes, absolutely. Would love to, Jennifer and Janelle and a bunch of other people, Rachna Mathur, who's a doc student in the EDD program, but also works for ASU Prep Digital, have been doing, like, they're high in demand for workshops, sessions, all kinds of things. So I think we are very ready to help in any which way that we can. And so we'll be excited to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Of course. Any other people who have used it or have had some experience in positive, negative, whatever it may be?
So my name is Farnos. I'm a graduate student, third year in EP program. So among the AI tools and platforms online, I found something that it did really help me in terms of specifically writing literature review and finding out some maybe resources, articles, book chapters, etc. that may not be readily available when I just search on Google Scholar or Scopus and other websites. The name is Perplexity. Maybe you have heard of that, or I can just put in the chat. And actually, it really helped me to, when I find some references, I then look for those references. And I really think that this is like complementing my other searches through literature, finding resources to write and to see what's going on in some specific topic. And that was my experience, and I really like that. And I would really like to know how other people are also using since they're doing research.
Thank you, Farnaz, for that. And one of the advantages, I think, of Perplexity is that it actually connects you back to the data where it got the information from. So that's a benefit. I'm trying to find it, but I had created a document where different kinds of tools that could be useful for literature review. There are some really powerful tools out there now which will do this network mapping based on citations and so on, which is a great start to do a literature review. And I can't seem to find it right away, but when I do, we can share it out. But again, I think that there is a lot of potential there. We had a previous session of just an hour with our faculty who have been using it for qualitative analysis, which was a really interesting session. And I think Lydia mentioned that they've been doing that as well in SERPI. So that's also another sort of possibility of how these tools can be used. Any other comments or questions?
I have a quick question. I came on a little bit late, and I'm not sure if y'all talked about this a little bit earlier, but there are so many different programs to use in this AI space. Is there any sort of logic that you think about? I want to use Cloud AI or Chat GPT. Is there some sort of logic that y'all use when you make a choice about which program you want to use?
Great question, Ishmael. I'm going to actually open this up to members of the LFC or anybody else. What are some ways that thumb rules I've developed some thumb rules of mine, but I'm just curious to hear others. And because you're absolutely right. There are just so many of them. I've never used Perplexity, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about it. So now it's okay, now maybe I need to add that to my list. So I'd be curious, anybody who wants to step in. What have you developed some thumb rules?
I think one of the things that I use is, especially with Perplexity, Claude, and Bard, and ChatGPT, is I think about what I'm hoping to do. And the reason why I started using Perplexity more was just because I wanted the resources. I wanted to know where the information is coming from. And then also I spend a lot of time, well, of course, in this LFC, but outside of that, talking to people about tools that they're using, and then trying to, I search other sites and looking for things that are easy to use, that are free. I really like free, but also things that don't ask for a ton of information about me. I think some of those I'm a little skeptical about, what's going to happen to my data after. I'm a little leery of the picture sites, but there's a couple that I really like to use. But I look for, things that are easy to use, quick to use, and then sourcing them from colleagues and friends.
Thank you, Janelle. Anybody else?
I think I look at first of all, what does the tool do? And kind of look at it with a lens of what are they trying to accomplish with adding AI. So a lot of different tools out there, things like Power Notes and, a lot of different extensions have added AI into their pieces or into their work. But a lot of that, as we're working through these, some of that is just hype to get the AI into their marketing. So, you see, we found that with a couple of different things, and you'll find that some of those tools don't really work any better with the AI versus without. So it's just kind of, being kind of very discerning to that point of what data they're collecting, what they're actually trying to produce. And then also we've looked a little bit at, at what sort of kind of where that information is coming from. What are the bias that is coming from that. So if it's coming from a big company, or if it's, more like a bigger platform like Perplexity or Cloud AI, or ChatGPT. Just kind of keeping a close watch on what's going on with those tools.
I just want to mention, I know Janelle was talking about using different tools and things online. And so one of the things that I've been doing is experimenting with different online tools like Colosseum and Synthesia that are used for creating slideshows and other things, but you can embed video and your own text within there. And then the AI actually has like a person that, you know, does the talking for you basically. And so one of the reasons I started doing that is I was looking at the situations with a lot of students who have a lot of anxiety and how to help them to be able to really showcase their abilities as researchers and as educators to show what they've been learning, but without them having to be on video, because some people are not very good at doing that, but they have like a lot in the background that they're able to add to it. And so I started doing that, and then combining that with ChatGPT and demonstrating to students how they could use ChatGPT to help them to stay focused on, you know, maybe reading large research articles and kind of narrowing down the specifics of the pieces that they need, the points that they wanted to make, and then use that information to take their own notes, and from that go into one of these other programs like the, I see Janelle just linked you there to one of them, or Synthesia, that is able to then, they're able to build the information into a presentation, because in a few of my courses, they actually have to do that. And they have a presentation for every single part of the course that they are doing. So every week they have one. And so just to try to give them some different tools and some different options, try to hit some of the inclusive components. Also started looking at that for some of our students who are hard of hearing, or maybe have some speech things going on that would make it a little bit easier for them to be able to communicate and using that AI voice. And so I know I reached out to you, Punya, at one time and like kind of asking like, hey, like, how did you do this? Because I want to like be able to use that, and I want to experiment with that. And then I want to be able to teach some students, you know, how to use these tools as well. So.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you. So, Felicia, you had your hand up.
Yes, good afternoon. I was looking at the reference sheet that was shared, and I wondered if anyone's had experience using, I think it's called CiteWorks, or it's for checking citations. I know that my students struggle with that, and I'm wondering if anyone's used it as a tool for them to learn more on how to do their citations. I just had never seen that one.
That list that's there, please do take it with a grain of salt, because they really haven't been vetted. These are examples that people have shared with me of tools. Okay. So it'll be hard for me, you know, I don't know. Jim, you had your hand up. Is there something, have you used it?
Yeah, I think you can hear me from the big screen here. I'm in two places at once, which is kind of fun. Were you referring to the RefWorks, where it'll check the citations in your paper and then check the reference? Yeah, I use that. Honestly, I use that with my student papers that come in. I look at their references, their in-text citations. I run it through the RefWorks, and it points out all the deficiencies between the in-text citations and the reference list. I started doing that with my student papers, and then I realized, why am I doing that? Right. I just gave them the site. I gave them the site and said, run your paper through that before you give it to me, so I don't have to do it made me look very impressive because I could find all these errors, but now I just have my students use that, and then the tool just goes to them. If I can mention one thing, as we're talking here, when the iPad came out, if you remember a long time ago, there was this whole question about, is there an app for that? And that was the big question, is there an app for that? And we're kind of in the same place now with AI, is like, is there an AI for that? But I think what's going to be happening is AI is going to be integrated into virtually everything. And as Jen pointed out, sometimes well done and sometimes not so well done. But I wouldn't underestimate, as Punya talked about, with the fact that ChatGPT can now see, it can now speak. There's a lot of things just within ChatGPT that we can explore with students in terms of the capabilities. There was a great article written about using ChatGPT to talk to it and have it respond back to you. Ethan Mollick put that on his Substack a couple of days ago. And I think there's a lot of richness there just within the evolution of ChatGPT itself. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be cool apps, because there will be. But don't underestimate some of the new features that are coming within ChatGPT, these new capabilities. I think there's a lot to explore there in and of itself.
Thank you, Jim. I'm just sensitive to the time here. So Ishmael, very quickly, I think a couple of criteria that I use. So for instance, for image generation, I used to use DALL-E. I don't do that anymore. I use Firefly or I'll use Photoshop because we have access to the Adobe Creative Suite through ASU, partly because all the images that they've been trained on are copyright, the images that they own or are Creative Commons images, right? So they're not training their models on somebody else's property. When it comes to these large language models, that policy goes out the window, right? Because they have been trained on I can go and actually look and see if the models were trained on my blog and website, and turns out like 0.0000001% of the training was on my website or something like that, some ridiculously small number. So it does go out of the window. I have found myself using Claude a lot more for academic kind of related stuff because the guardrails are pretty good. If I want more creative sort of stuff, I go to Bing Chat in the creative mode. It created this hilarious sort of self-deprecatory bio of me, which was actually incredibly funny. It's on my website if you're interested. So I think it's really is looking at which tool does what. Claude can take documents and so on. So it just depends on a variety of different things that, criteria. And as I think Jim said, it's really in a state of flux. I think one of the things we need to be also thinking about is the sort of issues of equity. For the longest time, the free version of GPT and the paid version were sort of similar, close enough. But now the difference between the paid and the free version is just staggering. And it's only going to get worse. That's $20 a month. That's a lot of money when you start multiplying it by large ends, such as at ASU, such as at public school or whatever it may be. And so we are going to see some of that happening as well. And I think those of us in the K-12 space need to be very sensitive to the fact there are going to be a lot of snake oil salesmen and grifters who are going to take their existing products and say, oh, this is AI now. And actually it isn't. It is just the same old product that they have where they put some kind of a veneer on it. And we are 1 minute away, so So first of all, thank you everybody who joined us today. Thank you all the people who talked about the incredible work that you're doing. If you're interested in being part of these LFCs, drop me an email and I'll make the right connections so that you don't have to deal with a lot of emails. Next week for just an hour, next week is actually Open Access, International Open Access Week, which is the idea there is community over commercialization. I firmly believe that we work in state-supported taxpayer-supported universities. The research that we do, the publication that we write need to be freely available to all. And most of, the predatory practices that many journals have and so on. And so given that week, that it's Open Access Week, our Just an Hour will be focusing on publishing in open access journals. We will have with us Stephanie McBride Schreiner, who's managing editor of MLFTC Scholarly Publications, Anali Perry from ASU Libraries, Yvonne Vilchis, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, who's an EPE PhD student and editor-in-chief of Current Issues in Education, and also an ambassador in the Directory of Open Access Journals in Latin America. So previous versions of the Just an Hour can be found on the My Education Hub. And with that, thank you again for joining us and look forward to seeing you again next Friday.